Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Enlightened. Maybe? I don't know if this is a podcast episode. We're at least doing a deck tech thing. So here we are. My name's Tim, your usual host, and I'm joined by fellow Team Galaxy Brain member Eli, who, for those of you who are paying attention, his last name is Brawerman. So you may have seen his name up on the Fab TCG websites, coming in third place for Calling San Jose. Eli, how are you feeling right now?
Tim, I'm feeling pretty good.
Sweet. I mean, that's good. If you were like, man, I'm really depressed about how I only got third, I'd be a little disappointed, but you never know.
I can't complain. Like, even if I, just getting as far as I did, especially like beating a Bravo that was gatekeeping my top 8,
Yeah.
that was pretty lucky, pretty lucky I went. So even if I had like gotten to that final, I would have just played that Bravo again, and I wouldn't roll those dice a second time.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in your tournament prep or lack thereof, but yeah, I mean, I had faith in you going into the Guardian matchup as opposed to a lot of other Lexi players. So yeah, we'll kind of talk about our Worlds experience a little bit. It was a blast. So just in general, we'll talk about that. And yeah, we'll go over kind of how you got into card games, what brought you into Ranger class, and then yeah, we'll go over kind of like high level tournament report, and of course we'll go over this lovely deck as well. There's some really spicy additions in my opinion in there. So yeah, let's dive in. So let's start with let's start at the beginning, like with every story. How did you get into card games, and how did that bring you to Flesh and Blood?
So my cousin, so when I was like a little kid, I played like Yu-Gi-Oh, and I like sold Yu-Gi-Oh cards at school until like the principal shut me down and like took all my stuff. It was all anyway. So like several years later, my cousin Michaela would play Magic, and she introduced me to Magic one summer, and then I got super crazy on Magic. I like deep dived. I was playing like standard, like is it mill, just nonsense. It was a ridiculous time. And I made like a bunch of friends playing Magic, and then like as that evolved, I started playing more competitive versions. I started playing a lot of Modern, Legacy, etc. But unfortunately, something that kind of always held me back was, even though like I was a good player, I always played bad decks, because the decks that I liked never really were meta. I liked going Snapcaster Mage, Kolaghan's Command. That was like just Grixis control things. Yeah. So, but funnily enough, in regards to like my history of deck building, I created this 4-color snow deck with like Arkham's Astrolabe and Ren and 6 and like all these cards that eventually banned Arkham's Astrolabe. So that was cool to like.
That was a wild time in Modern. What was that? That was the first Modern Horizons, right? When they started bringing all the snow cards and stuff. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, Dead of Winter was my favorite card. It was super fun.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Just like a Plague Wind or something. Like it gave all your all of your non-snow creatures -X for each snow permanent you controlled. Yeah.
Good. And it was super fun, but once like they kicked Astrolabe, it was unplayable. But anyway, eventually like Modern did its thing, and I kind of stopped playing Magic, and Wizards slowly been kicking Magic further into a specific kind of hole. And so when I heard about Flesh and Blood, I was like, let's check this out. And then I, like many other rejected Magic players, just like kind of swapped over.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's very similar to my story, right? Like where I was very entrenched in Modern specifically too, and Snapcaster Kolaghan Command is one of my very favorite combos in the game. Yeah, I kept seeing all these people post about Flesh and Blood like right around the time Monarch first was out, and I was like, whatever. And then like I saw that there were these Blitz decks that came out, so I was like, all right, I'll try these. And then I tried to get my wife into it, but she wasn't a fan. But I, like, as soon as I pitched and like played my first card, I was like, I think they like cracked the code on this game.
Yeah, it it really did it. Like the game just feels good to play. Like you just have so many, everything's so, every card is so optional. There's like such a high velocity to the game because you draw so many cards. So you know, they just like, you know, it has its own problems, but like anyone who's ever been mana screwed in Magic just knows that like these problems are better than the ones we've had before.
Yeah, and I mean that's like a conversation you had with Nitan in the car on like the way back from the airport in Portland. Is like, this game is like, this game has problems, but like if you compare it to the problems of like modern Magic or whatever, or even like you know, the golden age of Magic and like cons or whatever, it's like I think like going back to like Cons Limited and like the modern era when it was first starting up, like I still think Flesh and Blood is like, and maybe it's just because I just came off High of Worlds, but like it's like still the best game for me, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then it's still like, what's crazy is it's still so young. Like it's still like barely, it's like a couple years old.
Yeah, and that's
like
insane.
But yeah, I just the problems that like Flesh and Blood has like are much preferable to me, and I just think the game has a long way to go. Like in regards to like new classes and all this stuff, I was super psyched about how they just like snuck Assassin in here. I was not expecting that. It was very cool. Yeah. I'm really excited to see what they do with that. Because that's sort of like those dexterity classes, like Assassins and Rangers. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like play the decks that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you, was it just like a flavor thing or is it like a play style thing? How did you get into Ranger? Because if I recall, you actually played Azalea before Lexi came out.
So Azalea was like I started playing this game, and so I bought 2 boxes of Arcane Rising, and like I opened I have Ophidia, and I was like, what the fuck is this? This is cool. My friend like lost his mind because he's like, holy shit. So then I built like I was playing this like budget Azalea deck with like a bunch of commons and an Ophidia, and it's just like it's really funny, and I just like the theme of it. I didn't really like, I heard I didn't know it was good or bad because it was just like basically like playing tabletop decks. Mm-hmm. It was just fun, and that was cool. I just liked that the idea of like being a ranger and shooting arrows was just really cool to me. And to be honest, like the other classes, like at the time and kind of even still, like they just don't really appeal to me. That's why I'm excited about like as the game grows, we get new classes and new talents that sort of change and give like players who like, I can only play decks really that I enjoy. Like if I just play the best deck and I go to a tournament and I play best deck and I just like scrub out, I'm gonna feel like shit. But if I play a deck that I like, that I can find a way to like, that I think can be good in some way or some version of that or some version of a deck I like, then I'm just going to have a better time and I avoid burnout. So it just is a better way to do it for me.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's really, there was some other podcast that I was listening to, like some Flesh and Blood podcast where the host said kind of the same thing, where it's like, I'd rather just like play a deck that I'm having fun with because I just traditionally have better results. So I think that's a really great piece of advice. Yeah. I definitely vibe with that. I played a Rhino this weekend, so obviously I'm not playing the tier 1 meta deck, although apparently it's pretty good.
Good, but no, I think if you're like the best player in the world, Icelander's probably pretty busted.
Right.
We've all seen like very clearly.
And so before we dive too deep into the tournament, though, like, what was it, just for the viewers at home, what was it like at Worlds? Like, I know that, like, you took kind of a break because you were, like, traveling before Worlds, but, like, just the experience of, like, going to the first ever Flesh and Blood World Championship, the calling, the vibe, the side events, like, how did you enjoy everything, and what was it like going in?
So like, I really like that it started on Friday and there were some like cool side events we could do that were like kind of high stakes, or like mm-hmm. There was the Commoner tournament for the World Book that I played. And then there was those qualifier events for the Alpha Draft. Those were all really cool because they felt like they're side events, but like if you do really well, there's like it's actually like a cool thing you can win. It's actually something kind of worth your time, unlike just farming tickets. So I thought that was all really cool. I was really excited for this because, I'm moving out of, Portland soon. And so, we have our whole gang, we have our whole team of like, I don't know how many people we have now, we all got, we got a 11-person Airbnb, and we all just like broke down for the weekend. And that was like a really, really special experience, I think, for all of us. And it was just really fun to, like, I think on like Sunday or Saturday night or something, watching like, 5 people crowded around a screen, like playing some shitty, like,
I think it was like a Levia deck. Yeah, with the Dynasty.
They're like, this is crazy. And it was like, okay. But it was just like those moments and like the pictures, like it was just super, super fun to do all that. So like, I feel like Worlds was cool. And I like that it created, like, I think events like that are cool because they create opportunities for you to spend time with your people. And I think that is what was really special. Like the people, the friends that I made, and the furthered deepening of connections that I made with my friends already. That was like what was really extra special about it. And then like top 8ing is cool and all too. Yeah. I gotta be honest.
Yeah,
pretty cool too.
Icing on the cake, but I agree. I think I would go if I had gone this weekend and just like O2. Like I would have been bummed that I O2 scrubbed the calling or whatever, but like but like I just had a blast, like talking Flesh and Blood, playing Flesh and Blood, getting dinner with friends afterwards. Like it was all just so fun. I would 100% do it again. If you don't have friends, get friends. Would recommend.
Would recommend getting friends for sure.
So okay, so let's dive into the tournament then, and also like I hope that, like, just one last note on Worlds, actually, I hope that LSS just continues with, like, the venue is kind of weird. It was like an old circus tent, and people were like talking shit about it, but like it fit everybody like comfortably. They had enough space between people that I didn't feel like somebody was going to cough on me and kill me. So there was that was great. And then what's that?
Yeah, that was fine. I was just saying, you're totally right. It was like a solid venue.
Yeah, it was a fine venue, and like the side events, like you said, were just so amazing. So, I'm sure all of LSS watches everything we put out. So if you're listening, LSS, good job, and please do stuff like this again for callings, everything. Okay, so let's get into the deck, which I already have on my screen. So this is the list. I see you have 60 cards in your deck, and then you have your sideboard and weapons and equipment laid out. So we'll go through the specifics of the deck in a second, but going into the calling, what was your preparation like, and what was your thinking, without going too specifically into like certain like tech cards or whatever? Like, what were you targeting? What were you hoping to dodge? What was your preparation like?
So I'll actually to just off rail for a second. I'm going to talk about Lexi in general. So like sure. I played Lexi at the Orlando, Florida calling. I played and so I played this like Ice Lexi. I got 36th or something like that. And this was like right when like Cheerios Briar popped off, and I just think that the disruptive power that Lexi has is like, I think more other heroes are getting like more disruptive abilities now, but I think like that disruption is really like Lexi's like strongest suit. Like just having a card in your arsenal you can flip up for a frostbite is pretty free value, and you can do that, and it like messes with defense reactions, etc. It's just like it's like a pretty good ability. And I just like the power fantasy of Ranger really appealed to me. So I was forced to take the last like month and a half. I was like out traveling with my fiance. We were in Israel, we were in some other places. I don't even remember at this point. But I basically was like, cool, well, Worlds is coming up and I want to play the calling. And I think Icelander is the best deck. And I don't have time to practice and to master that deck. So since I didn't have time to master Icelander and to really like get that deck, anyone who's played that deck knows that what you put in is really what you get out. Like it is a hard deck to play. Just the decision-making chain, you'll finish a game and you could have won and you won't even know you won't even know you made a mistake. It's just a hard deck. So anyway, I knew that, and I was like, cool. So coming into this, I need to put something I know, And so I figured the best deck that I know would either be like Bravo or Lexi. And I thought that Lexi was actually like reasonably positioned. Like I didn't want to play Bravo Icelander, which I thought was the best deck. But I thought if I could just dodge Guardian a little, there's nothing really I'd be uncomfortable playing against. Like there's the three decks that I don't really want to sit across from are Dromai, Bravo, and Oldhim. And the way I built this deck was to minimize the possibility, like sort of to maximize the possibility of me having a good outcome into a bad match. So that's what a lot of the weird sideboard, the inclusions of the weird sideboard cards, like the Amulet of, or like playing cards like Amulet of Ice, Insidious Chill, Energy Potion. That was me maximizing my percentages into Oldhim. So I figured if I think there weren't going to be that many Bravos because you'd have to be brave to play it into like the Icelander meta. And I figured if I can dodge Dromai and Oldhim and more specifically, then I think I'll be all right. And like, even if I play against an Oldhim, it's unlikely that realize that I have actual game into it. They're going to think like, oh, cool, you're a free win. This is Lexi. Meanwhile, like they're at 30 and I'm at 9, and then, I kill them. And they're like, what just happened? So that was sort of my intention coming into this, was to like have game into Oldhim. And I think that I really succeeded there. And I'll explain like how all that works, but I got some like good matchups, but I also got had to play Bravo to like make top 8, and that was my absolute nightmare matchup. Like I figured I'll play Dromai or Oldhim and I can maybe game out here or there, but I figured Bravo would be just about impossible, and it generally is pretty fucking difficult to get into a Bravo, but they can. But it worked out. It's not because my opponent played poorly. It was just I got a little lucky, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, and your opponent actually went on to make the finals, which is like if you guys had both beat your bracket, you guys would have had a rematch, which would have been, I would have loved to have seen that. That guy seemed pretty cool though.
Yeah, I would not have loved that so much, but I complain about playing the final, but it'd be hard to convince your opponent. Like it'd be hard to convince your Bravo opponent in the final to like split the cash with you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
Let's just play it out. Let's play it out for sure. We'll just see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this definitely this bit me in the ass at like an armory where we were like doing the playoff for the cold foil or whatever. And I was like, you should just scoop. And you're like, I don't want to concede to you. And so we played it out and you actually won, which, good move.
That was fucking awesome.
It was definitely really late. And you like double Insidious Chill, triple Amulet of Ice me or whatever, but like that's why those cards are in the deck, right?
That's the point, is to be able to do. You're not going to be able to do it every time, but to be able to do it at all is really valuable.
100%. And like that game, you just like blew me out that game, but like there are other games that are a lot closer, right, where like you can get the edge. You can like take what is a negative matchup and maybe like squeak out a turn where you swing tempo like that and just get the upper hand. So so just talk about just go through like a high level what you faced, and you can go ahead and spend like a little bit of extra time on like any interesting matchups that you came across.
So I came in feeling unfavored into Dromai, Bravo, and Oldhim, and a couple other, like Rhino was a 50. It kind of felt like always kind of a 50-50. Like Dorinthia kind of always felt like the kind of like either person, just depending who's running hot. You just kind of get each other. But I felt like all these no block aggro decks like Viscerai, Phi, Briar, I just felt like so incredibly favored that I was comfortable like taking the unfavorable matchups, especially because I felt like those favorable matchups such a high percentage of the meta, just like Phi's. So I figured all I have to do is just play against those aggro decks, and I just have a good time, and it's worked out because I think I played against the order of I played something against like I played against a Dash, like 3 or 4 Briars, like 3 or 4, like I think 3 Phis, a Phi in the top 8, a Dorinthia, an Icelander. I forgot that another reason. Like I actually on Lexi, because from all of the testing I've done into Icelander, I felt like I had a good I felt I felt somewhat favored. Just like one frostbite can be so frustrating from like the other side of the table.
Yeah.
And if I can just, specifically in my deck, especially like I set it up so, I'm running, I think 23 blues or something. I'm running extra blues, another support, Insidious Chills, those cards like that. And so if I can just set up like big turns into the Icelander, I felt like I can just push it out since I have so many on hits. And it all worked out exactly the way that I thought it would. So that felt really rewarding. Is like I had all these theories coming into the calling regarding like this deck, regarding what I wanted to play because of what I thought it was good against, and everything that I thought was correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, let's go into the deck a little bit then.
Right. Before we go into the deck, I will talk about like one specific interaction.
Oh yeah.
That
sure.
like. So like, and that was like everything. The deck kind of like, if you're really good at it and you know what you're doing, there's not a lot of like there's a handful of like imperative decisions of like which card you pitch to play the 3 of a kind or something like that. But there's also like these choices where you make like there was the one like really memorable decision that I had to make the whole tournament was in the Bravo game. He puts out a Command and Conquer against me. And he has 2 cards in hand, so I'm like, cool. I'm gonna get pummel. I'm gonna get CNC pummeled. And like my arsenal is like Rain Razors, Arrow, and so I felt like if I get to play this Rain Razors in this, it gets me like closer to a win. But there's no way that I get CNC pummeled and still win this game.
Right.
So I'm running Perch Grapplers in the Bravo matchup, mostly to combo, but also for the block useful here.
Blocks 2, right? I think it blocks 2. Yeah,
it blocks 2. It blocks 2, yeah. So I threw my whole hand in front of it, and I had a no block in hand. So I'm blocking 10. So he holds the pummel that I think he has. And then the next turn he goes CNC again. I'm either getting baited so incredibly hard, or I'm mega minding. So I go with my continued plan of the mega mind since I've already committed. And I block 10 again with like my whole hand. I block 12, I think. So he holds what I think is the pummel again. And then the third turn he also goes CNC, but he pitches 2 red pummels to play it. And I'm like, okay, so if he had the blue, he could be mind gaming me because he still has 2 cards in hand. But if he had the blue, he could keep 1 pummel into arsenal, and that's the better play. So you like wouldn't mind games, you can make a better play. So then I think, all right, he doesn't got it. And so he ended up having the red pummel, but he didn't have the pitch to play it because he just drew all reds. And so that, so I blocked 6, assuming he didn't have the pummel, and then I took the tempo back. I got to play out my arsenal, and like that. I felt like that decision was the game, really, because if I had fucked that up even a little, that would have been the game on the spot.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't actually see that interaction. And that's like, yeah, fucking mega mind, right? Like,
yeah, it felt pretty good. It felt pretty good. Like, I don't know what that felt like from across the table, but that was pretty cool. That was like a really rewarding interaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, on to.
I mean, that's that was pretty. I mean, 3 CNCs, and you were able to like fade that because that's like the kind of the commonly accepted wisdom is that it's like the best card against Lexi, right? Because you like get like 2 or 3 cards if you pummel it, right? So.
Yeah, so he went CNC threatening pummel, CNC threatening pummel, CNC, and didn't matter.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, so I mean, let's dive into the deck. So you have it laid out so that like this 60 is kind of like your default 60, right? And then the sideboard is just what you switch in for different matchups. So let's go over let's just go over the default 60. And maybe we don't have to talk about every card. Like everybody knows like Channel Lake Frigid and stuff like that. But just go over some of the key cards of the deck, and kind of some important synergies that exist.
So there were like different flavors of building Lexi. Like Yuki built that. The no fuse deck. You're going Arc Force and stuff. And I thought, I thought that was cool. But I figured that if I'm beat like there's all the Fi can just output damage to just do damage. I would just play 5. And so I figured the one thing that Lexi really has is the disruption. And I really felt like Arctic Incarceration and Insidious Chill were like these huge cards out of Uprising, and I really felt like they gave it a lot of game for when you either miss your disruption or let's say the biggest thing I really think gave you is that Uprising gave you this critical mass of ice cards that let you keep tempo or retain value if you drew the dreaded like 4 no attack hands.
Right.
Like everyone's so convinced that Lexi just whiffs and loses to herself, and like she'll just draw 4 non-attack, and that's true, but not when your non-attacks are Insidious Chill, Channel A Frigid, Arctic Incarceration, Amulet of Ice. Like all of a sudden that's a nuts hand.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm totally like, if I draw all 4 on attack, I don't give a shit. That's totally fine. I'll just go Amulet of Ice, Channel Lake Frigid, pass, or like, Insidious Chill Channel, Arctic and Like, there's just so many winners between all these cards. Like, all of my ice cards get cards out of my opponent's hand, or they give me value when I play them. And I really felt like that was diminishing this huge weakness that Lexi had, which is like drawing these like awkward hands of like Ice Quake devices, and it's just like ended up losing the game because of it. So I really felt like playing extra, like going full hard into ice, would let me leverage those aggro matchups by just tempoing them out with the value I get from the disruption, and them having to like play their cards that don't like either block poorly because that's not what their decks are supposed to do, or like play into big disruption and get less value. Right. And it totally worked out. And also I'll add that, like Insidious Chill, Arctic Incarceration, Amulet Device, like all these cards, like they make your turn 1 so much stronger. I think you have like between every card in your deck, let's see, like 6, 10, 11, 12. You have like 16 plus, like probably like 16 or something ways to have like a nuts turn 1 where you just like get a lot of value. Like where you're like disrupting them turn 1, you play Arctic Incarceration, you play Channel of Ice, Channel Lake Frigid, you go like, Amulet of Ice, Insidious Chill, Arsenal. Like that's crazy. That you can do that. So the fact that you can leverage those cards, I felt like was super strong. But other than that, it's just Lexi things. You're playing your fuse. You're just playing your fuse cards. Like the only thing's really different is these setup cards that I have, like these Amulet Devices, Chills, etc.
Yeah, totally. And so, and like I saw this in action, when you were playing all weekend, but like the ability to like not only just the nuts turn 1, but like something that we like kind of collectively as a team had complained about Lexi is like she feels insanely powerful until the turn where you draw like some non-attacks, or you like whiff your 3 of a kind or whatever. But then you said something where you were like, well, you play 3 of a kind, and then like, oh no, like I have like Amulet of Ice, Insidious Chill, like Arctic Incarceration. So you like disrupt your opponent's turn, even though you're not doing damage, and just setting up for like a big wombo combo. And that is what's really appealing to me about Lexi is that she did get these insane cards out of Uprising. That one set. So what's what are some of the kind of the key cards in here? You went over the non-attacks, and you said kind of just like Lexi fuse stuff, right? So we're talking Chilling Ice Vein, Blizzard Bolt, which you're running rainbows of everything, only 2 Blizzard Bolt instead of 3 for blue, I should say, and then Frostlock, and then those are kind of the elemental arrows. We've seen those a lot. Any like particular notes about those that you will want to talk about this weekend, or?
I mean, Frostlock is one of my favorite cards. Like, if you can weave a Frostlock, Fi is just going to lose so much. Like, that's just you're just taking an extra turn and slapping them. So I love Frostlock. I love a normal solid hand is like you play a fuse arrow into a 0-cost arrow, and then you arsenal.
Yeah.
And like that's whether you arsenal another arrow and like however that is, that's like a good turn. because that turn they're either keeping cards and they're having an inefficient turn because of disruption, or you're just there's blocking out and you're just getting more time to set up or to draw into your Rain Razor Endless Arrow nonsense, like what really wins you games.
Yeah. So that's another. I mean, what appears to me as like an outsider who has played like one game of Lexi in his life, Endless Arrow seems like a pretty like a pretty key card in kind of the Lexi strategy in general.
Sure.
Yeah. So are you playing that in like every matchup? Are you ever cutting it? Is it a key part of your strategy? Tell me a little bit about that.
None of the arrows ever come out
Mm-hmm.
except for like I don't know, blue blizzard bolts. I
Sure.
sometimes cut for the scene, which I'll explain. But like yeah, like Endless Arrow definitely, like of all the cards in the deck, Endless Arrow put in probably the most work of any of them. I think I had one aggro matchup where I played the same Endless Arrow probably like 10 times that game. And it just never left because like
Yeah.
he never blocked. He was like making efficient blocks, etc. But like this one fucking Endless Arrow stuck around the whole game and gave me like it was great. I love that card. Hilarious card. I feel like players don't really know what to do when you play an Endless Arrow. Because if as a Lexi player, uh, if I ever play an Endless Arrow for like 4 go again, the only reasonable response to not like 50% chance of losing the game is just like block 6.
Yeah.
With 2 cards. And if you can't do that, then like I don't know, you're really rolling the dice there.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite plays that I saw that like, I mean, it was just like the creme de la creme to me is you were so. We didn't even mention this. You played Pablo Pintor in your top 8 match.
Yeah.
Who was on Fi, and was also until I mean I can't I have to assume everybody just agrees Michael Hamilton's the best in the world right now, but he in contention, well, like potentially one of the best players in the world, PT champion. Um, you beat him while he was on Fi. One of my favorite lines that happened though is, and I don't remember your exact hand, but you're running the CNCs in this matchup, and you go you play a blue Polar Blast from Arsenal, draw a card, and he's like, I'm sure, like I'm trying not to block, so he doesn't pay to not give your next attack dominate. You load up Endless Arrow with Go Again, I believe, and so it comes in for 4 dominate. He probably blocks 2 of it or 3 of it, whatever. Goes back to your hand, and then you came in with either one more arrow and a CNC or a CNC after that. Like you basically sequenced it so that he had a lot of hard decisions, but he was like keeping his arsenal and trying to maximize his next turn, and then you just smacked him with the CNC, and it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, the scene that was a really cool. I had I had that turn weird decisions, a lot of which like would have lost me the game. The turn prior, I had the choice of arsenaling the Polar Blast or the Endless Arrow. And this is like we're both out of equipment. It's like it's like he was at 4, I was at like 2 or 1 or something, and it was just like a lot of. So I felt like if you arsenal or arrow chant, you get more shots having a bigger turn, so he can't block you out or something. Even though he doesn't want, he actually could block pretty well. He's playing a fair amount of like blocking cards, but
yeah.
Or maybe he just saw. That's just what I recall. I didn't actually look at his deck list, but yeah. So I ended up arsenaling the Polar Blast. The extra draw would be worth something, and I figured that if I could use the dominate on the Endless Arrow, that'd be really value. And so I play the Polar Blast from Arsenal, and then I go Endless Arrow. He can't block it, so I get to Endless Arrow again. And at this point, I'm threatening every attack. I'm threatening lethal, and then so he blocks he blocks I think he blocked that second one. And right. and then I get to come in with the card I drew off of the Polar Blast, which was a yellow to let me pay for the CNC for like it was like 8.
Well, yeah, and that was it too, right? It's like
14 damage, like super good.
Yeah. So yeah, it was that was so crazy to me. Like and it's just like I feel like this is what I missed when I like dabbled in Lexi is like there's a lot of like little interactions like that. Like I feel like the way LSS is like kind of designed the game is to make it obvious for like, oh yeah, you want to dominate big attacks to like push through damage, right? But there's all these little interactions in Lexi, right? Like Polar Blast into Endless Arrow is like actually quite good because they're either just taking 4 and giving it back to you, or they're blocking it efficiently, and you're still getting another endless arrow. And so just like seeing that was what it was, is like endless arrow into another endless arrow into CNC. Like that was just so, like, that line was just so beautiful to me, and I love that there's like so many little lines like that in Lexi. So yeah, I mean, would you say that this is like besides maybe like, maxing out on like Arctic Incarceration, Annual, and Insidious, but I mean, is this like a pretty standard 60 for Lexi? What do you think is the most like and disregarding Sideboard, is there did you cut any sacred cows or put in any extra spice in the main board?
I mean, the spiciest mainboard stuff is probably like Insidious, Chill, right. Amulet of Ice. Everything else I feel like is fairly standard. I feel like most of the Lexis have been gravitating towards like the Art of War-esque play style, but
like the kind of we'll call it the Yukili Bender, like Art of War type Lexi that you were just talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just not I don't know. It just didn't really. I had my doubts about that play style coming into this, and. Probably the weirdest in this deck is the energy potion, and that is just for Oldhim.
Yeah, well, that's great segue. We didn't even plan that one. Let's slide down to the sideboard here. Pretty standard equipments too, right? Like Snapdragon, New Horizon, obviously, Tunic, Bullseye Bracers. We'll talk about Bullseye Bracer Shock Charmers too, because you said some funny shit regarding that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then Voltaire as well, obviously. Anything to say about these equipments before we kind of dive into this 15 sideboard?
New Horizon's super cracked. That card's crazy. I love it so much. Snapdragons are like your default boots for sure. They just let you be super versatile. The Bullseye Bracers lets you like Bullseye, Snapdragon together let you threaten on like those big turns, like individually and together, like probably an extra 7 damage, but sometimes each, which is kind of but it really just depends. I also have games sometimes where the Bullseye Bracers because things don't line up properly, but those generally aren't the games you're hoping for necessarily.
Right.
Purse grapplers are specifically for matchups where you are going to lose if you cannot block specific cards, which is Bravo and Oldhim. They're actually specifically to activate, which is very odd. So I really wouldn't play Perch Grappler. Like Bravo, Oldhim. I don't even think there's anything else I'd really play it into. I might play it into Alexi.
Yeah.
But
if you're trying to combo, would you play it into something like Dromai, for example? Like, would you?
No, definitely not. I think you need that like usually pure aggression. For me.
Okay. So you're getting more like consistent damage output with Bullseye Snapdragon as opposed to like setting up for a huge turn with against Oldhim or Bravo or something.
The huge turn is really for the Oldhim. Bravo, you'll just need to block at some point.
Yeah, the 2 block is more relevant.
Yeah. 2 block will be relevant. But a weird card, like I am playing Shock Charmers, and I love this card, and I played it a lot on like Tales Release in like the Big Ice Lexi deck. I do think it's not the best, but there are specific scenarios where I want it. Like I don't want it against Fi. I only want it against decks that do not want to block. Mm-hmm. So already that's much like 5 Viscerai, and like 5 Viscerai Briar, and then. I don't really want it against Fi because the games are generally so short that the opportunities that I'll get to use Shock Charmers and that'll line up in an important way are rarer. Mm-hmm. And so I'd rather just have like the guaranteed, the slightly more consistent value of like the Bullseye Bracers.
Yeah.
But into Briar, Shock Charmers is like, I go back and forth against Briar between Shock Charmers and Bullseye Bracers. But if you were ever going to play Shock Charmers, like the best deck I think to play it against would be Briar, because you can get the free block out of the Spell Void 2 on the Rosetta Thorn at some point in the game, and then you're also able to get value out of Shock Charmers. And this deck can leverage Shock Charmers really hard because if you on those 3 of a kind turns, you often draw an ice card or 2, and you have extra resources. Mm-hmm. And so if any damage leaks through, it's just blow it all into shock charmers, and you just get a lot. You just get a lot of value for that, and lets you use all the cards you draw off of 3 of a kind. And if you can, play 1 card to draw 3 cards and use them all, like that's pretty crazy value wise in regards to a game. So that the ability to do that is really huge, and the ability to like threaten to screw up their turns. But I kind of joked about with the team that Shock Charmer is a weird card because it's at its best when your opponent is not extremely familiar with everything that you're doing and your ability to like tinker with the game state. So I joke that like I have all these sideboard cards, and like Lightning Press, Lightning like Hypothermia, these play against decks, and then Shock Charmers is a card you like play against players. But it's like, so in the beginning of the day, like I was playing Shock Charmers into a lot of the aggro matchups on day 1, and slowly, like as the day progressed, I ended up wanting the Bullseye Bracers more. So in if I were to rebuild the deck, I feel like I'd probably keep it in, but it's definitely.
But it's in that like flex slot kind of like it could be replaced.
Yeah. It probably could be replaced, but what's weird is, as Lexi, you really do have kind of an odd amount of sideboard space. Like a lot of these cards are like weird side grades. Like Hypothermia is marginal. Like you only wanted, like it's good against Dory, it's good against Dash, but outside of that, you don't really want it. So it really could technically be something else, but what else are you going to put that actually provides you a real benefit?
Yeah, sure.
Because your deck sort of requires so much from you in regards to the ratios. You can't just like take out arrows, and you can't take out Ice Club, and you can't take out like, it just like has such specific values in those cards that do occupy pseudo flex slots are cards like Rain Razors and 3 of a kind, which are like uncuttable. So you have very few slots you can actually like play with. So that in a way gives you a lot of sideboard space, because you get to play all these like situational cards. Like for example, Lightning Surge is really for Oldhim, but I honestly would, if I were to rebuild the deck, I would play it. And I honestly don't know what to put in instead, because I didn't really even need the slot. So you actually have room in the sideboard to like play weird cards. Yeah.
I mean, and that's really fun, right? Like, so you can tinker around with your sideboard. So we went over Perch Grappler, Shock Charmers, No Room Boots seems kind of obvious to me. Just talked about Lightning Press and Hypothermia and Surge a little bit. I think this. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the spiciest inclusions in your sideboard are Energy Potion and Command and Conquer, which I had never seen in a Lexi deck.
So Command and Conquer is another one of those cards that it kind of does, like you're already doing the things that you're doing. Conquer slightly better into certain matchups. So like, since I'm running more blues to support Insidious Chill, and it actually helps with Shock Charmers as well. But since I'm running more blues to support that and in regards to playing against Ice Heroes, if I'm playing against an aggro deck like Fi or a Briar, often what I was doing was I was cutting a Blizzard Bolt or 2 of the blue, because it's the worst arrow. It's like the worst of all the fuse arrows, the blue Blizzard Bolt. And I would replace them with like 1 or 2 CNC. And I was like really happy with that. And it like, it won me the game against Pablo, for example. And it just gives you a little bit more disruption, and it doesn't really hurt you too much. And it doesn't really hurt you because I'm playing extra.
Right.
That's kind of what the CNCs are for. They're good against Lexi if you run into one. They're good against Dromai because Popper. Yeah. Outside of that, and then it's good against aggro decks because it lets you pressure them with on hits. And then, the E-Pots are entirely for Oldhim, and I'll explain that whole strategy in just a second. But the most common like sideboarding like decision you'll make in this game with this deck is you will just, against some decks, you'll play the 60 here, and then a lot of decks, the biggest decision you make is you just change the red Arctic Incarcerations for the red Lightning Presses. Like if the Frostbites don't mean that much, then you just turn them into Lightning Presses. Like 1 Frostbite or 3 Frostbites for Icelander can often be kind of the same, right, or into Guardian. So you'll swap the Arctic Incarcerations for the Lightning Presses and call it a day.
Yeah, right on.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so like, let's say if you're playing against Fi, I would run this exact 60, and then I would put in a Command and Conquer or 2, and I would take out a Blizzard Bolt or 2. Other than that, you play this exact deck into Icelander, for example. I would cut the 3 Arctic Incarceration reds, and I'd put in the presses, and I'll put in the no reboots, and that's pretty much it, I think. And you just run that. You just run exactly that.
Yeah. So that's first of all, I think it's really cool that the sideboarding is like, I'm going to say relatively straightforward, and that there's like a clear plan, right, for what you take in and put out. But then you have the 60 core, right? Like as a former Magic player, it appeals to me because like sometimes I get all tripped up for like what's the core of my deck and like what am I adding to these matchups. But it's nice to have like a standard list. And it's like, okay, for this situation you go out and in. So that's really cool. So for somebody who's like looking to like jump in and like pick this deck up and start learning it, I feel like it would be hard to like be really good at it in your first few games. But like, what are some like tips and tricks that you can give to somebody about Lexi in this deck?
Play it a lot. Like on Uprising release, I noticed that after all the inclusions that like running, you start running these non-attacks that don't have go again, just like Arc Incarceration and Insidious Chill, and they put you in kind of a weird spot when you can't then also Arsenal an Arrow later, because then that was a mistake I was making. Like I'd Arsenal Red Arc Incarceration, and then I'd Arsenal like an Endless, and then I'd like drop my 4 and realize that I just bricked my next turn. Because I have to play one of these and I don't get my action point back. So I'd say like, be careful of that. And then just like really just the reps. There's some like weird theory things that like more delicate decisions. Like let's say you have in your hand, you have a yellow arrow and a blue ice card, and which one, and you have a 3 of a kind, and like what, and you don't have a tunic counter. Like what are you pitching to play your 3 of a kind? Are you more worried that you won't draw an ice card and you won't have disruption, or are you more worried that you won't draw any arrows and you're just gonna like break your whole turn? So like decisions like that, and like you just kind of have to get comfortable with like, well, what's left in my deck? What have I seen so far? When was the last time I saw cards? Like those are like those sort of more of minute decisions that you'll get to later. But like I'd say on the decision making is just like play the deck, and you'll realize like what works and what doesn't, because you'll realize like, oh shit, I can't Arsenal my Arctic Incarceration and then an Endless Arrow. So I have to sort of sequence my turns in such a way that like, I don't end up with, two weird things stuck in my arsenal and extra cards.
Right. Yeah, right on. Yeah, there seems like that's I mean, good advice for like every deck you're trying to learn is to, like get reps, but like it does seem especially like I'm glad you clarified that like there's a lot of situations that like seem good at first, right? Like yeah, sure, our Red Arctic Incarceration seems like a good thing to just like play some arrows, then like end of turn put it out, but then you realize that like you can't do everything because you're limited by your arsenal spots and your Voltaire activations and your everything. So yeah, that's good to hear. Any other tips and tricks? I have one more question for you after that.
Yeah, so I'll explain Oldhim a bit, but then I will add just that one of the like super powerful thing you can do with Arctic Incarceration as the red is it's crazy. Like it basically makes 4 frostbites, which is a crazy. The difference between 4 frostbites and 3 is monumental. But what's really good about Arctic Incarceration is that you flip it face up with Lexi, and then your opponent knows it's there, and then you shoot some arrows at him, and then he thinks you're going to play the Arctic Incarceration, and so he thinks his turn sucks into that, and he wants to block, etc. And he blocks you out. You just don't play the Arctic Incarceration. Yeah. Or if he thinks that, so you like put him in a no-win situation where he either has to like eat your whole turn's worth of damage, and then he also will get Arctic Incarceration, or he blocks out, and you'll just hold it and you'll do it again the next turn. Like it's just a really cool like no-win situation you can put your opponent in.
It's kind of like it's kind of like when your opponent plays around Pummel, right? Because they get.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you played around Pummel, but that was that you had a game plan. But like people who was like, oh, he might have the Pummel. I don't want to get pummeled, so like I'm gonna block an extra 4, and then they just Arsenal the Pummel, and then they pummel you later.
Yeah, exactly.
But in this scenario, there's the mind games of like you can see the Arctic Incarceration, so it sort of forces your opponent to. Well, it allows your opponent to more opportunity to misplay, right? Which is really cool.
Yeah, so great card. Like the red Arctic is super good. So then I guess I'll just talk about Oldhim, which is the main reason I play this deck ways. Ranger's biggest weakness is those super crazy block decks. But what I realize is if I'm playing as an Oldhim, I can play Amulet of Ices, I can play Insidious Chills, I can instead of like attacking a lot and like just getting fatigued, I can like block out, get to like make a crazy like second or third cycle, and just kill him from like 30. And the whole way you do that is you just start the game and you play your Amulet of Ices, you play your Insidious Chills. You like still need to shoot an arrow or two once, like so that they are required to block a little. You don't want to just give them 5 cards every turn, but you can leverage a 5-card hand better than they can. So whenever you give them a 5, often playing the Insidious Chills and the Amulet of Ices decks will play defensive against you. And so then one of your turns where you've just been like smacking them with 6 cards, 6 cards a turn, and you just go, okay, I have the tempo, you have 4 cards. I'm just going to go Amulet of Ice and Insidious Chill pass. And they're stuck with like 2 D reacts in hand, look like an asshole. Like it's like a good spot to be in because it just puts your opponent in weird positions sometimes. So against an Oldhim, he's coming at you with, let's say, CNCs, hammer, etc. A lot of block, keep your life total high, like play an Amulet of Ice or an Insidious Chill, and then pass. And then once you pitch your endless, you set up, you pitch stack endless arrow, rain razor, some 3 of a kind nonsense. And basically what you want to do is you want to set up a second cycle where you need at least an E-pot. You want at least at least 2 Amulet of Ices, 2 Insidious Chills, if not all 3 amulets. Mm-hmm. The amulet's super strong for that ability to choose exactly when you want to eat their hand.
Yeah.
And then you need to pitch stack a ice card, like a fuse arrow, an endless arrow, and rain razors. And if you can do that, and if you sneak a 3 of a kind in there, it's pretty good too. But you don't necessarily need it. But as long as you have that fuse arrow, you play that fuse arrow in the second cycle. You pop all your amulets. You pop your 2 Insidious Chill triggers. You completely shred their hand.
Yeah.
And then from there on, like their hand's empty. You have like you've activated Voltaire like once or none, and then you're free to like endless arrow rain razors them as many times as you want. And I think the maximum amount of damage is like it's like 30 something with shooting 5 arrows like a bolt and shot and stuff. But more realistically, like you set up like 20 to 30 damage off of like second cycle Amulet of Ice, Insidious Chill, blah 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 against an Oldhim, and the ability to do that, especially against Oldhims who don't understand that you can do that, or decks that don't understand what your goal is there, like that is super powerful.
Yeah. Well, so thank you for the overview. I think this is a really good starting point for anybody who's looking to just like pick up this deck and start running with it. So here's another question that I'm sure everybody who's interested in this deck will ask: like, is this deck going to be good after Dynasty? Let's keep it hot takey. Do you think this deck is going to get better or worse after Dynasty?
Damn, it's hard because it also how good this deck is after Dynasty depends on how good Assassin is.
Yeah, sure.
Because if Assassin's a playable deck, I'm sorry, but Assassin is like a fucking horrible matchup for. Yeah. It's like it's really really atrocious. Like a Frostbite's really bad for them, but also like Assassin wants a ton of D reacts. It has like functionally 6 to 9 weird versions of Command and Conquer in their deck between like Surgical Extraction, Leave No Witnesses, CNC. Like you don't want that shit. That's fucking terrible for you. And then like they have all these banish on hits. They get to take your block points and make silver because you don't block well. Like, it just everything that they're doing works well into what you're doing, and it's not where you want to be.
Yeah.
But I do think aside from that, like I don't think any deck got I think Dash got some cool stuff. I think Reinar got some cool stuff. I don't really see too much that like I'm like scared of necessarily. Thankfully, Guardian looks like got pretty much fat nothing for the most part.
Yeah, there wasn't anything that like I saw. I was looking at all the cards with Nitan, who, for those who don't know, he did a deck tech on our channel with for Oldhim. and he's kind of like our guardian like main. And we were looking over it with him, and I don't think he thinks there's anything either. Like he could, maybe he's wrong. Maybe we'll make him make a video about it, but I didn't see anything that I was like, oh yeah, that's like a slam dunk replacement for, you know, whatever. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. But I will add that there are two cards that are good for Lexi in this and or this deck, but they're better for this sort of like Art of War version of the deck.
yeah.
Like, and those two cards are Heat something or other. What's it called? I have it. What's that card?
I can just click over to this. Shout out to February for being a sick website.
There's two cards that are like worth looking at for Ranger in regards to Lexi specifically, in my opinion. Really,
Heat Seeker, yeah.
Heat Seeker and where are they? Heat Seeker and Drill Shot. So Heat Seeker, you know, functionally draws you a card, but it's better than that because in Lexi it draws the card like a top face-up card in the arsenal, which still lets you arsenal. So if you have, you know, you go Fuse Arrow, something, and then end of turn, and your Heat Seeker hits, you're coming back at them the next turn with another 6-card hand.
Yeah.
And that's really, really strong. So I think Heat Seeker is worth playing. It's hard to fit it into this deck because you don't really want to cut your 0-cost arrows because they're in follow up, like on pit blue with you know, you want to go Fuse Arrow, 1-cost arrow, and that's wrong. But like if I were to put them in this deck right now, I'd probably cut like the yellow, or I'd cut 2 blue Blizzard Bolts and something like that. I think. So that the Heat Seeker is definitely solid, and then Drill Shot I think is worth playing. At least in the sideboard because there are some like extra slots over like, you know, the lightning, etc. Just as like a side grade arrow.
Well, and I mean it's a 0 for 4 like we were just talking, like, so it's a good follow up card, right?
The Pathing Helix, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, like, the Pathing Helix kind of lets you play like a pseudo Art of War thing, where like you threaten a Pathing Helix after you play Three of Kind or something, and it puts your opponent in a position where like the most threatening thing ever. Or you can threaten like further arrows on Rain Razors after you've used Voltaire a couple times.
Right.
But so I don't super know like if you would just take out those Pathing Helixes, maybe that upside is only marginal. But Drill Shot is definitely like a very powerful card. If you put a -1 counter on like if Oldham, you know, he's using Rampart and you put a -1 counter on it, that Rampart the rest of the game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So like that's super strong. If you can put it on an equipment that blocks 2, you know, you're getting a lot of value off of that. So I think Drill Shot and Heat Seeker are worth including in some way, but the problem is like it doesn't really do a lot for this exact list. It's like they're side grades and or like they make certain things better, they make certain things worse. They're not like direct upgrades, but I do think they're worth playing in.
So you'd have to like retool the deck as a whole a little bit to make sure they all synergize. But like, no, good.
Probably. But I do think they're good cards.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Heat Seeker is super sick, and yeah, the more that I look, every time I look at Drill Shot, I think it's a little bit better. And yeah, hearing you talk about it makes me pretty excited to play it. So
yeah, Drill Shot is definitely better if you can put aim counters on it. But Drill Shot's definitely super powerful. Like that's a card that pretty much has to be blocked because they're losing they're wasting their armor on like a useless arrow.
Right.
Otherwise, so yeah, I do think those are good, and I'm excited to see what the new meta is. New cards are cool. I'm gonna see if Azalea is playable with the Great Bow, etc. Like all the aim counter arrows.
Yeah, maybe.
I do think it's annoying they're giving like the class with historically the most amount of hoops to jump through, more hoops to jump through. But it's what it is. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Eli, for spending an hour to go over this deck. Amazing deck, amazing run this weekend. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a testament to, you know, like, I mean, obviously you're a great player and you have a good like card game mind, but like you've been on Lexi since day one, like since she came out, and I feel like you have like you've always been innovating, even when, you know, the meta's solved, or even when the hero is like, oh, like this is the obvious way to build it or whatever. And so I think that just shows that like you can be a specialist with an underrepresented hero, and be quite successful with it, and you can win your bad matchups. Like,
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, thank you so much. I gotta go pick up my daughter from school actually. But thank you so much, Eli. Safe travels while you're moving, and to the audience out there, make sure to like and subscribe. Where can people find you on the socials? Do you have a?
You can find me on Discord at Eliyahu. I'm sure you'll see me in like the Lexi Discord somewhere once in a while, or other places. And then you can reach out to Team Galaxy Brain, and we're all connected.
Hell yeah! So yeah, definitely. I'll make sure that any comments on these YouTube videos get over to Eli via Discord or a pigeon or message on Arrow, whatever. We'll figure it out. So please comment, like, subscribe, algorithm stuff, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.